Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. My name is Suryani Awang and I'm here to present a paper entitled Is Use of Fillers a Disaster in Oral Communication? And the co-writers of this paper are Wan Nur Hafizah Fatini Wan Hassan, Prof. Dr. Norma Abdullah and Muhammad Zafian Muhammad Zawawi. So some background of the study. English, as we all know, is a second language in this country, Malaysia. And having a good command of English is an added value to ESL speakers, particularly in high-stake interactions such as job interviews. Despite this, however, English language proficiency level has been reported to be declining in this country for the past few decades. So the problem is, low proficiency level has resulted in many unfavorable comments about Malaysian graduates. They are said to not to be able to speak, to communicate well during their interview, during the job interviews. Now, with the use of communication strategies, right, speakers are helped to convey their message. So what are communication strategies? Based on Donnie and Scott, 1997, communication strategies are strategies used to overcome various problems in L2 communication. These are strategies like code switching, word coinage, asking for clarifications, asking for confirmation, circumlocution, things that anything that they do mostly to tackle problems that they face when they face difficulties in expressing themselves. Now, fillers is one type of communication strategy. It is a time-gaining strategy used to fill the gap when the speakers look for the right words in the target language. In other words, when they have difficulties recalling the right terms and they take time to think. So this will be the gap. And how do they fill the gap? Yeah? By the use of either lexicalized pause fillers or hesitation gambits. So what are lexicalized pause fillers? They are words like, okay, actually, words like that, which has no meaning in that sentence, but somehow it is used to fill the gap. And another one is what we call hesitation gambit. These will be words, sounds like So what are the research objectives? Number one is to identify the use of fillers as communication strategies by candidates of staff recruitment interviews at UiTM Cawangan, Kelantan. And number two, to examine interview panelists' perspectives on the candidates' use of fillers. So this is on methodology. This is a qualitative study involving two instruments. Number one is an observation on 19 candidates in staff recruitment interviews, and these are recruitments for 3 different faculties: FSSR, Faculty of Art and Design, Information Management, IM, as well as Academy of Contemporary Islamic Studies, ICEELST. Another instrument is interview, whereby panelists were interviewed to gain their input about the candidates' use of fillers. So data analysis, the oral data were transcribed and they are categorized based on Donnie and Scott's taxonomy of CS. But for the purpose of this paper, the focus will be on use of fillers. And then the researchers use NVivo software to do categorization. And of course, the extract, we only extract findings on fillers. Now, the results shows that fillers were used extensively by the candidates with 388 occurrences. They can either be lexicalized pause fillers or hesitation gambits, or sometimes it's a combination of both in one short sentence. So an example that I extract here would be, basically I'm doing a PhD, I'm doing my PhD, you know, basically it has no meaning there, it is actually a filler. Or another one would be, what I'm doing right now in this situation as academician, I'm using several platforms, which is I encourage my students to use some of the digital platforms. So utterances like this involve lots of the use of lots of hesitation gambits. So this is the breakdown, whereby lexicalized pause fillers 23, hesitation gambits 299, and both, a combination of both, I got 66. So total is 388. Next, what's the dependency perspectives on the candidates' use of fillers? Okay, so one of the panelists said that the most unfavorable type of CS is the use of fillers. You know, despite being the most common among the candidates, fillers are actually the most unfavorable, at least to these panelists. I don't like the use of because it is quite disturbing, and too much use of words basically actually can also be also annoy me. Sometimes the interview panelists hear the words actually more than their input. Sometimes too much use of fillers will make the interview panelists lose patience. However, if the use of fillers is minimal, I can accept it, as we and interview panelists really understand that the candidates may need some time before they speak. You know? So the use of CS, particularly fillers in this case, must depend on the situation, and the interview candidates must also be careful with the frequency of using fillers so that it will not be too obvious. Okay. Another panelist mentioned that, in my personal view, I do not like use of fillers. Even though the function is to gain time, I think the process of communication is not smooth when the candidate started a lot, you know, mentioning words like that. To me, whether the use of fillers or the use of CS leaves positive or negative implication, it will be based on the choice. Yeah, on the choice of CS. Sometimes if they use too much of fillers, it may affect their performance. So these are some examples of, these are some input given by the panelists. As a conclusion, the choice of CS use must consider context of interactions. If it's very important communicative context, speakers must be wary not to use too many fillers, because like what the panelists just mentioned, it is quite disturbing. But the use of fillers is acceptable, you know, not to a certain extent, but it shouldn't be too excessive. So the implications of this study and its recommendation is the teaching of CS must take into consideration elements of appropriateness for effective oral communication. Maybe if you speak to your friends, to your peers, that might not be too risky. But in high-stake interactions, when you speak to your superior or people of higher authority, then it is not favorable. It is unfavorable. So since our recommendation is, since the respondents of this study are Malay ESL speakers, future studies are recommended to examine the results of a similar study if they are conducted involving other ethnic groups. And it will shed light on the extent of cultural influence on one's use of CS, particularly the use of fillers. With that, I thank you.